This is the Fantasy Football Fellowship Podcast, where we unpack fantasy, faith, and life. I'm Bryce Johnson with Pastor Trip Smith, and we are your fantasy coaches here to encourage you and help you win while you play fantasy football with purpose. As we provide fantasy advice, we won't always be right, but we hope we'll be convincing. We won't always start the season 2-0, but stick with us. We still want to win fantasy championships. It's early. It's early in the season. Don't be discouraged. You might be 0-2. You might be 1-1. There is still time. We've got this. Those rookie running backs, we got to give them time, right? We just got to give them time. All right, we're going to have some fun today. We're coming to you live from the Unpacking the Ministry studio outside of Charlotte, North Carolina. Today, we are unpacking some of the surprises, some of the disappointments. We'll play a little Peace or Panic for a number of these players that have gotten off to a slow start this season. And then what about some of these players that are doing great? Are we jumping on the bandwagon? They look good against teams like the Saints. How about these players that are great against the Dolphins? Do we buy into them? Will that continue? What do we think about the Colts 2-0? Do we love those fantasy players? We'll also, we'll play a little Who Is That? Look at the waiver wire today as well. And then each week here on the show, we do a weekly breakout, and we take a fantasy concept related to the Bible, related to life. And this week, we're talking about our lineups, and specifically how stressful it is, how worried we get about putting together that lineup, especially as it inches closer to 1 o'clock. And we're wondering, is this guy going to have a good game today? Is he going to be as bad as he was last week or as good as he was in week 1? Is the guy on my bench actually going to outperform this guy that I'm going to start? And then I'm worried that I'm benching the wrong guy. So we will discuss that wrestling today on the show, and then how that parallels our own life and how we deal with stress and worry and anxious thoughts. And so about much more important things than putting together our lineup each week. But it still matters, and we'll still talk about it. But we're excited to continue here on the podcast, but also for those leagues that are meeting around the country with Fantasy Football Fellowship and using our content to then have league meetings and discussions about fantasy, faith, and life. And so I hope that you're meeting. And if you haven't signed up for your free membership yet, it's available for free on fantasyfootballfellowship.com. And I hope that you'll get your league going. And if you are participating, I encourage you each week, the person that you're matched up against, reach out to them early in the week, ask them how they're doing, ask how you can pray for them, and then go beat them in fantasy. And then follow up with them on, Tuesday. And not that you have to brag about it, but if you lose, then you send the congratulatory text. I had to do that today. I lost to somebody at church. The sad thing is I did well. I finished 3rd and 2nd in that league the last 2 years. And now this year I find myself at the bottom. And I'm depending on some guys that have gotten off to a slow start, like Chase Brown. What does this mean for Cincinnati now that Joe Burrow's out? So let's say hello to Trip. And Trip, maybe you can help us navigate all these challenges that we're facing. But how you doing, buddy?
You like to do the check-in text or call with your opponent for the week prior to the game, huh?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Because I like that policy too, but I usually wait till afterwards. And then I know what the tone of the conversation is going to be. I guess you can do before and after,
So usually it's a text like, hey, I got you this week. It's going to be fun. Hey, how you doing?
Right,
I try to do that.
Yeah.
With 5 leagues, I can't say that I do it for every league every week, but that's my hope throughout the league, at least to check in, see how they're doing.
Yeah, just raise the stakes a little bit. It's fun. Yeah, good way to stay connected with buddies. I'm good, man. I think after week 1 of fantasy this season, I was feeling pretty excited about my teams. I thought that I had drafted pretty well, and my expectations were knocked down quite a bit this week. And as I've looked at my lineups, I'm not exactly sure why that is. I do have Amari and Hampton in a lot of places. I know we're going to talk about those rookie running backs, but it's just more like I just had kind of a middling week this week, which never makes you feel that excited. It wasn't the worst that it could have been, but it was a rougher week than I got off to last week to start the season. So let's talk about it, man. I need your counsel.
There we go. So we're 2 weeks in, and we start our show with some fantasy shenanigans.
Fantasy shenanigans.
All right, so this is when we talk about some of the surprises, the crazy matchups, injuries, interesting decisions that maybe we've made as fantasy managers in the past week, how they played out, and just sort of a recap of the shenanigans from the week. And I guess first thing is, because we're 2 weeks in and many of our players had one great week, one bad week. And to me, week 3 is such a crucial week because then it's sort of the tiebreaker for some of those guys. Now, for players that have gotten off to 2 bad weeks, the panic meter intensifies. And so we'll do peace or panic in a little bit. And then when it comes to the rookies that we have on our roster, I really believe we have to give them more than 2 weeks before we make drastic declarations about them. And then I will say this, players who are dropped this week, tonight, people are going to go on their lineups or on their teams, and they're going to drop players. Some of those players will end up on other teams' fantasy championship rosters.
Great reminder.
It happens. And so you want to get those guys. So it's important to figure out, hey, who do I get on the waiver wire this week that are available? But who's available on Wednesday after guys have been dropped? Last week, I was excited. I'm not as excited today, but last week, I picked up Ray Davis and Braylon Allen in a 14-team league because they were dropped after poor performances week 1.
Yeah, those guys will be relevant before the end of the season.
I tend to think they will, especially Ray Davis, because James Cook's doing awesome. Will that continue for 16 weeks? I don't know, but we want part of the Bills' offense. So that's interesting. And then, of course, the headline this week, the shenanigans, it's the injuries. It's the quarterbacks that are injured, starting with Joe Burrow. So it affects me in one team because I have Joe Burrow. I don't even have a backup, so now I got to go into the waiver wire. I'll probably start with Browning, but Daniel Jones, I believe, is available, so I'll be excited to pick him up. But what do you make of the injury and now the ramifications for Bengals players?
I think Joe Burrow is an amazing quarterback. And he has 2 of the best wide receivers in the NFL. And the way that the Bengals organization has let him down from an offensive line perspective. I mean, if you watch that game week 1 against Cleveland, he was just getting pressured constantly throughout that game. Always Cleveland Browns players in the backfield. And we just thought, okay, well, this is what Myles Garrett does. He loves to bust up the Cincinnati Bengals offense. He loves to go after Joe Burrow, but they looked terrible again this week. And even before he got injured, you're just like, he's getting pressured. He's getting knocked down. He's getting hit too much. And the play that he got injured on was just one of these situations where the whole pocket just collapsed around him because his offensive line is getting overpowered. And it's just a shame because when he's healthy, he's so good, and they've invested so much in the skill players of that offense, but they haven't invested a lot in the offensive line, and I went back and looked at their draft picks. They did take an offensive tackle in the first round last year. I mean, they've tried to address it through the draft, but the guys that they've gone after just haven't hit the way that they need them to. And now I don't think that he's coming back this season. I think that 3 months sounds like the best case scenario. It was a grade 3 turf toe, which means the ligaments were torn. He's got to he's getting surgery. I don't think that after 3 months, he'll start kind of running around and seeing how the foot feels again and kind of rehabbing. I just don't think he's going to come back this season unless they're really in the hunt, which I don't expect them to be if Jake Browning is the quarterback. Browning is a fine backup QB. If you're in something like a super flex or a 2 quarterback league, you got to go out and kind of make a bid on Browning, even if you don't have Burrow. But he just is not inspiring for the Bengals, real NFL prospects this season, I would say.
No, but the thing is, when you're as good as Jamar Chase, he makes quarterbacks good, and he's just that good that he'll continue to produce for fantasy managers. Now, will he be the number 1 guy? Like overall, that's probably unlikely without Burrow. But he had a big game yesterday, on Sunday with Browning. So Chase should be fine. I hope that they rely a little bit more on the run game with Chase Brown. I can't figure out where he's been, what's going on with him, but hopefully some more of the drop-offs to Chase Brown in coming weeks will be good. So for those of you that listened to me and bought into the hype for Chase Brown, I hope that he'll be okay. So I think overall, it's sort of a hold. I wouldn't sell Bengals players. I wouldn't necessarily be active to go try to trade for them either. If you have them, ride it out. And that's kind of my thought right now.
I'm going to tell you, I would trade Jamar Chase if I could get 90 cents on the dollar for him. I'm trying to find this stat. I should have written this down. I can't find it, but I saw something about the games when Browning was the starter last season.
Two seasons ago.
2 seasons ago, excuse me. Yeah, because Burrow was healthy last season. 2 seasons ago, that like 6-game stretch or whatever where Browning was the starter. Now, granted, there's been some time since then, but his stats were still that of a very good wide receiver, but not the number 1 overall wide receiver. I know we have questions about some of these other receivers that we thought were like top tier. Nico Collins hadn't kind of taken off the way that we wanted him to.
Nice catch. We'd like a little more.
Great catch. Exactly.
Catch more than that.
I think that if I could take Jamar Chase right now and trade him for Amon-Ra St. Brown, Nico Collins, one of these guys that we thought was kind of the back end of a wide receiver 1, I think that I would do that pretty quickly. Chase will still be good. You don't have to fear putting him in your starting lineup, but I don't think that he will be the number 1 overall wide receiver. And so if you can still capitalize on that name value, I would absolutely do that.
All right. So a couple other shenanigans going on and just some of the news. How about out in Seattle? I was all excited about Zach Charbonnet. So I started Zach Charbonnet. He scored 1 point. And then Kenneth Walker played how many people drafted him to play and expected him to play. So this feels like a running back committee. Can they both thrive? Maybe in some weeks, but it's going to be kind of tough to figure out. And, Walker has been more of the guy, but he's just been injured. And so Charbonnet now back to the bench, and we'll see how this plays out. But Seattle seems like a decent team. They're, Darnold's playing well enough, and that was a big win for them to beat Pittsburgh. So, That was something that jumped out to me. Of course, this is classic. This is not surprising at all. Ramondre Stevenson has started the season off strong. Yeah. It's classic. This happens all the time. The veteran, annoying running back that we're ready to move on from is saying, hey, guys, I'm still here. Meanwhile, Travion Henderson, who, the fantasy darling, thanks to the preseason, we're waiting for him to get going. A little slow start. Be patient. Eventually, the tide will turn. But for a while, if you got Stevenson cheap, enjoy the ride. I still think eventually it's Travion time. And then let's see, anything else that I want to mention? All right, Russell Wilson. I mean, week 1, we laughed at him.
Did not see that coming.
And then he was one of the best quarterbacks this week. I'm still not running to get him on my fantasy rosters, but a little bit more encouraging if you have neighbors. I think it's worth at least keeping an eye on Theo Johnson. And then I'll say I'm dumb. I'm dumb for not drafting Wan'Dale Robinson because I knew that he put up numbers last year. But I remember listening to a fantasy radio show this summer, and they talked me out of Wan'Dale Robinson, and that was a silly thing because he's a catch monster, a target monster.
He's a good wide receiver, and people were excited about him coming into the NFL. And I have him in every PPR league that I'm in.
Do you have good for you?
He's targeted so much. But last year, it's like his yards per reception were like historically low, like one of the lowest of any receiver with more than 100 targets or whatever. Russell Wilson still has a nice deep ball, and so he airs it out with that kind of high arcing moonshot, and that's good for Malik Neighbors. That's good for Wan'Dale Robinson. Wilson did have a fairly egregious interception at the end of that overtime, where I think that it's only a matter of time before Jackson Dart is the starter. Let us not forget that the Cowboys defense is not very good. So that was an exciting game. It was a super fun game to watch.
Wild.
It was definitely Russell Wilson needed that to continue to be the starter for the Giants. But yeah, I'm not running out to get him, but I think you can just be a little more optimistic about the receivers there.
And the other encouragement from that game, and we said this last week, Dak Prescott, he looked good the first week. He looked good, at least at the end. He lit it up down the stretch. And so I think the Cowboys will be in those types of games. That should continue. And so you can feel good about Dak and Pickens and CeeDee Lamb, and Ferguson got involved, double-digit targets for him. And then, of course, Javonte Williams. Looked good again.
Williams, similar to Ramondre, is one of these.
Yeah.
Through 2 weeks, he looks like
he's in the
steal.
Ramondre.
Yeah, the difference is it's not clear who's going to replace him or supplant him. So Williams really could be a value all season long. I'll also just say, man, I know you're anti-kicker in fantasy. We don't talk about kickers very much on this show.
I have no kickers in any of my fantasy leagues.
And that's fine. I think that's a good policy to have. But Brandon Aubrey is an absolute beast, man. You put him out there, and if you're within 70 yards, it's like you've got a chance to make that game-winning field goal. So he's one guy that we missed in the injury section that I just think we need to take a moment just to honor, just to pour one out for this guy is Austin Eckler. Right?
I love Eckler.
Eckler, he's such a likable player. He was an undrafted guy, right? Yeah, give it, because I do think at his age, the stage of his career that he's in, an Achilles injury in week 2 probably means that we don't see Austin Eckler with any sort of like relevant kind of real football or fantasy football role. But yeah, what a great player. Seems like a great guy. Sorry that his, I think, kind of career is going to end this way. And it opens the door for Ja'Cory Cross-Merritt. It's going to be interesting to see now because he has been much hyped. And through the first 2 weeks of the season, with the exception of that touchdown that he got, it's been more of a timeshare there, and he hasn't looked maybe as great as he was being drafted. You said this before the season, that he was going to be overdrafted because of how much the hype built up behind him. But now he's going to have every chance to be like the workhorse back there, and it's going to be interesting to see what happens.
So this is a gut feeling. Washington could have a tough season.
Yes.
It just, so far, things might not be clicking for them. And, Dallas is going to be better. Philadelphia is not going anywhere. The Giants will be competitive. This could be one of those just kind of step back years for Washington. Jaden Daniels is banged up, might miss a week or potentially more, but Marcus Mariota, he's okay, fine backup. But like we were worried about, or at least I was worried about, Terry McLaurin holding out, not good, hasn't gotten off to a great start. Debo's been solid, and Zach Ertz has been solid. Those two, from fantasy standpoint, have been good. But when I look at the running back situation for them, Bill could be solid, but then they still talk about Chris Rodriguez and McNichols. I would not go target those guys on waiver wire. I'm not going to go get them. If it's anyone, it's Bill, or it's a little bit of all three, and or the Washington Commanders just have a down year. Right. So there's some concern there. But as far as Eckler goes, if I had a first team all Bryce fantasy team for the last 20 years, he's on it.
Nice.
Love Eckler. Huge Austin Eckler fan. He's won me a lot of fantasy games. So
when he was in his prime, I mean, he was a scoring, and especially a PPR monster.
Love Eckler.
Sad to see him go out that way, but he's had a great career, and I wish him all the best. And he's got a good persona too. He'll probably get into like broadcasting or something like that. So he's got another sports career ahead of him.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah. There's something when we're as fantasy managers, when we make ads and drops, there are certain drops that we just love, right? It's like, this guy blew it for me. You're dropped. Get out of here. And we like that. We have this sort of authority or whatever. And it's just like, you're done.
It's a cathartic drop.
Yeah, get cathartic. Out of here. And then there are the sad drops. And when I drop Austin Eckler tonight, it's going to be a sad drop. So goodbye, Eckler. I may even keep him on my IR for a little while, just out of respect for Eckler. But yeah, he's done. But yeah, anyway, so there you go. There's some of the shenanigans. I'm trying to think of the biggest move that I made this week. Starting Charbonnet did not go well for me. And then last night, going into Monday Night Football, talk about shenanigans. I was up against like the one guy in my fantasy league that I love to beat more than anyone. He's a good friend of mine, but I had Omarion Hampton, Ashton Genty, and Nico Collins all playing Monday night. And I just needed each of them to basically hit their projected. I'm winning
this game, yeah.
Yeah, just solid, be average, and I would have been fine. And they all underachieved, all three of them. Well, and disappointing.
Collins, that first drive, great touchdown pass. And you think, okay, here it comes.
Oh, they fed him too.
Bad week. Yeah, and they're trying to target. I mean, I sort of wonder if they just don't have anyone else to pass to that really threatens the other defense. And so the opposing defense knows what you're going to do. But I mean, is now the time to talk about these rookie running backs, or are we saving this for accountability? And
you go ahead.
I mean, I'm worried that the Chargers look like their plan this year is to just unleash Justin Herbert. I thought they were going to be this ground and pound, strong offensive line team that they were last year. And I didn't think that Najee Harris was really going to be a factor. And it seems like they are committed. I mean, Quentin Johnson is coming alive. He looks like a good receiver.
Keenan's still around.
Keenan is still around. I mean, and
what Herbert did Ladd finish with last night?
Ladd, he didn't do much.
No, he's been quiet.
I think Ladd McConkey is going to be kind of a bust for where he was drafted this season. He was going at like sort of that wide receiver 1, low end 1, high end 2 range. And it just looks like those other two guys are just going to, so he'll have good weeks. McConkey will have good weeks, but I'm worried about him. But I'm very worried about Omarion Hampton. It was a totally even split with him and Najee Harris last night. I mean, Travion Henderson, I think Ramondre, I think, will continue to get chances as long as he's healthy and he doesn't have the fumbling issue. So I expect Henderson to be better, but I don't think that he's just going to take over that role from Ramondre unless there's a fumbling problem that comes along. So some of these, J.K. Dobbins continues to eat into R.J. Harvey's work, and Caleb Johnson. Am I correct that Caleb Johnson has negative 0.1 points through the first 2 weeks of the season?
Yeah,
I mean,
I think he's droppable.
He is droppable. Yeah. I mean, they're committed to Jaylen Warren, and unless something happens there, it doesn't look like Johnson's going to be a factor this season. So some of these rookie running backs, and now Quinshon Judkins is back. He's practicing with the team. It doesn't look like a suspension is imminent. It's
Make him wait a little bit. They just threw him right out there.
Just went right out there.
They're so desperate.
I don't think that right. When your other option is Jerome Ford, I think you're like, well, let's just give it a shot. Let's see what we've got here. But none of these rookie running backs look exciting right now. I think if I could buy low on Ashton Genty, I would. But the other ones, it's unclear what the future is going to look like for them.
Well, the shenanigans is we don't want to think about offensive lines. Like, we don't want to break down offensive lines. And in many ways, I'm not equipped to break down offensive lines. I don't know if these guys can block. But what I can see is our holes opening up. They're not really opening up.
Right.
Like Hampton or Genty. Like, it's not like they're not fast or whatever. There's just no hole. If there's not a hole, what do you expect from these guys? So that is concerning. So they're going to have to shore up these O-lines and get the run game going.
Yeah. I will say, I think,
but there's
Raiders,
no one else like Genty. Who's coming in?
That's exactly the point. The Raiders, I think, have played two sneaky good defenses.
Yeah.
And so if I could go out and buy low, if there's somebody who's panicking because they took Genty in the first round and you're in 2 weeks in your league, if I could go acquire him, I would do that because I'm expecting better things for him. Don't know what to expect for these other rookie running backs in the next 6 to 8 weeks.
All right, we'll do a quick question from the audience here, and then we'll get into our accountability and confession. Lux asks, would you accept this trade, Chase Brown and Kelsey for CMC and Ridley?
So I'm giving up CNC and Ridley. I would want to be on the side of that is getting McCaffrey and Ridley. I think I continue to think that Kelsey is on the decline in his career. I'm worried about what's going on in Kansas City. And even though I think that Chase Brown is going to be a little more insulated from the Burrow injury than Higgins and Jamar Chase are, I think I want to be on the McCaffrey Ridley side of that. But what do you think? That's pretty close for me.
That's a good trade. Yeah, depending on the rest of your roster.
I guess it depends on roster.
But I would lean towards CMC and Ridley. I think the Titans are on the rise. We felt good about them in the offseason through 2 games. Like, we've seen enough to go, all right, let's give them some time to get going. And so I think Ridley will be okay. And then, of course, CMC, if healthy, he's great. He's as good as it gets. So, and the 49ers look pretty good, even with Mac Jones. All right, let's get into some confession. Here we go.
Pardon me, Mr. Perfect. I guess I forgot that you never ever make a mistake.
Just when I think you couldn't possibly be any dumber, you go and do something like this and totally redeem yourself.
I am the smartest man alive.
All right, let's this is the segment where we admit when we're wrong, or maybe I'll brag on Tripp a little bit where he's correct and I was wrong.
Thank you.
And so we'll do, and maybe you can return the favor. I mean, that's fine. But let's start with where I was wrong. All right. James Cook is lighting it up. James Cook is winning weeks. He was unbelievable again. Talk about shenanigans. Josh Allen, sort of a quiet day. Plus, he got banged up in his nose. But the Bills are so good, they didn't need him to do much. But I said to avoid James Cook through 2 weeks. It's not looking good. And then, man, I absolutely love Tucker Kraft. And I think we both were in on Tucker Kraft. He looks phenomenal. I believe this will continue. Yeah. I believe he's a top 6 at worst, maybe even a top 3 tight end the rest of the way. I just regret I don't have him in more leagues. I think I have him in only 1 league.
Yeah, you talked me into Kraft in the preseason, so that's a good one for you. It's
early in the preseason.
Right, you were banging the drum for him. I wasn't as sort of all in as you were, and he has looked like one of the best tight ends in the NFL through 2 weeks. I mean, I think if he has another game like this, you're starting, and he's still pretty young by tight end standards.
Oh, yeah.
You're starting to talk about him as one of those top 5 guys. So yeah, that was a great one for you. The other side of that coin for me is that thus far, it seems like I am wrong about Matthew Golden. And Jaden
Still
Reed,
early.
It's still early. He's a rookie. Jaden Reed is hurt. And I will say, if I was going to try to kind of cope a little bit, I would say that Love missed him on not one, but 2 long passes where one was underthrown. The other one Golden probably should have had. And just so but yeah, Kraft seems like he is going to be probably the pass catching option that you're the most excited about there with Green Bay. Yeah, I mean, gosh, how should we feel about Jalen Waddle? Right? I mean,
I give you a little love. They look better. The Dolphins look better.
I was demoralized after week 1, and Waddle did have a touchdown this season. Now he had a touchdown on my bench, so it didn't do anything for me. But that's one that I still don't know how I feel. But if there's gonna be a bright spot for that offense, and it's possible that there just won't be one. It's obviously Achane, but I also think that that Waddle, maybe the continued sort of antics of Tyreek Hill are going to benefit Jalen Waddle, I think.
Staying in that game, very excited about Drake May. So he's a starter in 2 leagues. One league, he's the only quarterback on my roster, and so I'm very invested in Drake May. Yeah. But that was a great performance. Now, you don't get to play the Dolphins every week, but you do get to play him twice, so that helps. But hopefully Drake May continues. And then I did go out and pick up Juwan Johnson. I spent a lot of waiver dollars to get him, and I'm happy about that. I think he's going to be a key weapon in New Orleans. New Orleans stinks, but they got to throw. They got to try to do something, and Juwan's going to be the beneficiary of that. Where I was wrong is Cam Scatterboo. He looked pretty good. Yeah. He looked pretty good. I think there's still a role for Tracy, but
I've been surprised by it. It seems like they want to go to Scatterboo sooner than later. Yeah. So I'm worried about.
I'm out. I was out on him. So that was a miss.
I thought that was going to be more of a committee, but that's a tough one for Tyron Tracy backers. But
all right, so there's some of our accountability and confession. But each week on this show, a big part of what we do here at Fantasy Football Fellowship is it's about our breakouts, where we take fantasy concepts, we relate it to the Bible, we relate it to life. And this week, I want to talk about our lineups, which is such a key element to what we do every week. And it comes down to decision making and who we're going to put in, who we're going to leave on our bench. And the reality is, it gets a little stressful when you're getting toward 1 o'clock and it's almost kickoff, and your daughters run down to the basement and they're wanting to play, and you're like, I got to figure out who I'm going to put on my lineup here. Who's going to be my starting RB2 when these rookies aren't doing anything? Or who, this week the stress is going to be who you're going to start at quarterback when you're playing backups. And so we can agonize over, the choice to play either this running back or that running back. And we debate with ourselves about what player to put in our flex spot. And, we often, we'll weigh our options based on matchups and previous performances. It's like, all right, is he going to be who he was in week 1 or who he was in week 2? And then, of course, the health of each player. It's like, well, Brock Bowers. It's like, oh, he's not that injured. And so then we convince ourselves, well, he's Brock Bowers. We got to put him in our lineup. But what if he is hurt? Or what if he gets hurt when he's, he actually goes out there and after a couple plays, he goes out. And so it becomes stressful during all these situations, especially when we have 2 players that are very close in terms of, rankings or projections or kind of what they've done as far as points per game. And we know we can only put one of them in our lineup. And so we feel the pressure of, all right, I got to decide who's it going to be. And we go back and forth. And then we also play the what if game in our mind. And we consider all the different possible outcomes for each player. And, what if our running backs team decides not to run the ball as much today because their opponent has a stout defense? Or what if this game is a shootout and it's just going to be, more passing, and so they're going to get away from the run game? What if his injury is more serious than they're letting on? And so we play the what if I bench the wrong guy game. And then this is the worst, right? This is guilty. You're afraid that if I bench this guy, he's going to have a huge game. So then I better play him. But wait, no, he's not as good as the guy that I should be starting. Yeah, but what if this guy, you know how it goes, right? You're nodding your head. Tripp's nodding his head. You get it. And so these are the questions that swirl around our head. We ask ourselves, what should we do? And we want to have an awesome starting lineup every week. And we don't want to make mistakes with the guys we put in there. But at the same time, we can't predict the future. We can't, perfectly get all these lineup decisions correct. And we can't control the outcomes. And so because of this reality, it is easy to become worried, fearful, anxious, concerned. Like these are the emotions and feelings that we feel, and we don't like not being in control. We don't like the what ifs. And then, we feel it intensifies the closer we get to kickoff, but then also as the season goes along, the closer to the playoffs. And if we've lost a couple early in the season, it's like, I'm feeling the pressure. So every lineup decision carries more weight. And so, the more that's on the line for us, the more we analyze and second guess ourselves, and it just gets stressful. And so, of course, this is part of playing fantasy football and what makes it so competitive. And really, there's a big mental game to playing fantasy football. That's part of the deal. And so, what do we do about it? And so let's bring Tripp in on this. And so, Tripp, what do we do about it?
I don't know. I haven't figured it out. I mean, I'll tell you, I'm playing more best ball this season than I have ever played, including a couple of best ball leagues here with unpacking it. And there's something that I really enjoy about that, because when the computer just puts in your very best possible lineup, it feels really good to look at that lineup at the end of the week. I mean, I'll say, I have this analysis paralysis. I made this week, and this has happened to me a few times in my fantasy career. I made a trade that came through at about 12:30, and then I immediately got to decide, what am I going to do with David Montgomery? He didn't have a good week one. I felt like I was buying low. I did not foresee them scoring 52 points.
But we didn't talk about that earlier. We needed to.
I left him on my bench, just kind of analysis paralysis. Like, let's give it another week and see what happens there. And it didn't feel good. It didn't feel good. What I'll say is that I think what I've learned over my time of playing fantasy football is you make the best decision that you can make prior to games starting at kind of 1:00. You keep an eye on injury updates and things like that. But other than that, I make the best lineup decision that I can. And then if I look back at the end of the week and are just like, a lot of points on my bench, low scoring on my starting roster, generally I try to put it out of mind. That's going to happen to you if you're playing fantasy football, that you're going to have weeks like that where your bench looks like it outscores your starting roster, and you just got to move on. Now, if you notice a trend that goes for 4 weeks, that's a different story, but I try not to be too hard on myself on a 1 week basis, because it can cause a lot of ongoing just sort of stress and anxiety about, God, I have to get this right. I have to get this right. And the truth is you just can't get it right all the time.
Nope. So we have to relax. We have to be confident and try to be at peace about making the best lineup decision we can with the information that we know, and feel good about the decision. Sometimes the outcome doesn't always go exactly how we want it to, but we can feel, just good about, hey, with the information I had, here's the guy I put in. And we have to remember that we can't control what these players do on the field. I can't control whether or not the offensive line opens up a hole for my starting running back, my first pick overall, my 5th pick overall, Ashton Genty. But in order for us to, really enjoy fantasy football, we have to sort of let go of some of that stress and the negative anxiety and stress and fear and worry and all those kind of things, because it gets us all worked up about our fantasy team. And we have to pull back and go, wait, it's just fantasy. It'll be all right. Let's look at the full scope of the season, not worry about every, lineup decision to the level that sometimes we do, and try to have some fun with it. And so here's the deal. As we parallel this to our own lives, maybe it's tough for us to deal with fantasy, but what about in life, right? Chances are we have much more important decisions that we face, and we find ourselves in similar situations where the feelings are the same, where we're feeling like, oh man, I've got a tough decision to make. There are unanswered questions about the future. I want to control every outcome. I don't want to make mistakes. And then because of this, we can be worried. We can be anxious. We can be fearful. We can be concerned. And yes, there's a proper level of being concerned and all that. But what happens is our minds can be filled with negative thoughts as we go back and forth in our heads about potential outcomes. And we play the what if game, and we analyze things maybe so much that it debilitates us and paralyzes us and holds us back in many ways. And so oftentimes, we don't know what to do, but we feel the pressure and the stress that we have to make a decision. And then, we fear that, things won't turn out the way that we want them to. And then when it comes to big life choices, the intensity increases and the weight starts to, the longer we go on with a decision sort of looming, that weight can be hefty because we know what's on the line. It affects our family. It affects us personally. It affects, our future. And so those decisions we face in everyday life and in certain seasons of life. Some of those bigger ones don't thankfully happen every day, but they happen throughout our journey. And so here's the deal. As followers of Jesus, we truly can relax, be confident, and find peace in whatever we face when we place our trust in him, his plan, and his character. And if we're honest, it's hard to do because we want to control everything. We want to know all the answers. We don't want to make mistakes. We don't want things to go wrong. But it's in the uncertainty, it's in the decisions that we face that God wants us to turn to him, and he wants to give us his peace. He is peace. And so we can be confident in him. And so here's what it says in Philippians 4:6-7. Don't worry about anything. Instead, pray about everything. Let me say that again. Don't worry about anything. Instead, pray about everything. And so what if we really just lived by that? The simplicity of that. It's hard. Like we talked about last week, love God, love people. What if we just didn't worry about anything, but instead we prayed about everything? And then it says, tell God what you need and thank him for all he has done. Then you will experience God's peace, which exceeds anything we can understand. His peace will guard your hearts and minds as you live in Christ Jesus. And so are we living in him, trusting him, abiding in him, relying on him, and finding our peace, our joy in him, which then allows us to approach these decisions with his strength and his peace driving us so that we don't allow the fear, the worry, the stress to derail us, paralyze us, hold us back, cause us, other negative kind of harm when we allow that to weigh us down so significantly. Yes, we're going to feel pressure in life. Yes, there's going to be moments of stress, but what are we going to do with that? Are we going to turn to God or just allow that to win? Or are we going to let peace take over and drive us? So Tripp, I know you can relate to this, and how does this land with you?
Absolutely can relate. And I mean, in my own life, the way that I think about this is like, I think of this as two concentric circles. Okay. So there's this inner circle of the relatively small set of things that I can control and influence today. And I think for those of us, if you're paying attention and if you're maturing in life, one of the things that you're learning is that sphere of control is smaller than you thought that it was. The number of things that you are actually in direct control of, it seems to sort of shrink as you grow older, if you're paying attention and if you're learning wisdom and maturing. And then there's this second sphere of things that I'm aware of that I would like to be in control of, right? And that circle is much, much bigger than it has ever been before because we are inundated with information, including a lot of bad news about the world around us. We can know more about our physical health and our medical situation than we've ever known before. We can know more about what's happening on the other side of the world than we've ever known before. We have more data to be worried about than we've ever had. And I'm just convinced that the space between that small inner circle and that huge outer circle, we can only fill that space with one of two things. And it's either anxiety and fear or prayer. You are not big enough to control those many, many factors out there that you are worried about. And the only thing that we can fill that huge space with is more anxiety and worry and sometimes anger or prayer. Are we filling that space between the things that I am able to influence today and the things that I have totally no control over with trust in the Lord. And that trust is manifested in prayer. So I love that you brought up that Philippians passage, right? Don't be anxious about anything, but in everything, submit your request to God, pray to him. And then it says there's this peace which surpasses understanding. It's not something that we can totally understand. We can't reason ourselves into peace and calm, but God can give us the gift of peace that even goes beyond what we can understand when we fill that space with prayer and dependence on him.
That's cool. That's good. Good image there. And so, we have to continue to seek him and keep our eyes and minds fixed on him. And so we can, declare what it says in Isaiah 26:3, you will keep in perfect and constant peace the one whose mind is steadfast, that is committed and focused on you in both inclination and character, because he trusts and takes refuge in you with hope and confident expectation. And so where is our hope and our expectation? We talked about hope a couple of weeks ago. And then, it's like, wait, perfect and constant peace. Wait, that's available? And so, yeah, it is available, but we have to stay committed and focused on Jesus, because as soon as we shift off and we start to worry about the what ifs and the outcomes and things down the line, and well, if this happens and that happens, and then we start thinking about our running back on our bench and like, well, what if he goes off? And now all of a sudden we're worried about our lineup. But when it comes to serious things in life, if we get so caught up in all the other stuff versus being focused on Jesus and who he is and the promises of his word, like the peace is there. It's available to us, but we get off track. We lose focus on him. And then also it says in Psalm 34:4, I prayed to the Lord and he answered me. He freed me from all my fears. And so the idea of being freed from our fears, doesn't that sound pretty good? Because there's plenty to be fearful about. But man, when we turn to him, we pray to him, we trust in him, we can experience such freedom and hope, and those fears are replaced with hope and confidence in him and peace. So I hope that those are, some encouraging verses for us today. And so, kind of the last thing to talk about is, like I mentioned earlier, sometimes when we're playing fantasy football, if we allow the stress and the worry to sort of sucks the fun out of playing fantasy football. And so when it comes to life, there's this important part of our relationship with Jesus and pursuing the Lord is enjoying him, delighting in him, fellowshipping with him, worshiping him. And oftentimes what we'll do is, and I'm very guilty of this, is we seek God for answers, which are good. Like that's not a bad thing. But what if we shifted it to where we just seek God? We just turn to God. We just enjoy God. We spend time with him. We look to him. We don't turn from him. We just, stay, we remain. And then as that relationship is flourishing and we bring requests to him and we ask him to help us, like it's just a better process versus, all right, God, all right, here's what I need. I got this decision. I need you to do this. I need you to do that. I'm frustrated here. And so it's just sort of a different approach and a heart set and posture that if we just pursue him and delight in him. And so it leads us to a verse in Psalm 37:4, delight yourself in the Lord and he will give you the desires of your heart. Because as we delight in him, now our desires start to align with him. And then we know what to pray for, and we're more in tune to his will, and we desire what's best, like what his best is. And we let go of some of the control and I want this and I want that. And I'm worried about the what ifs and the outcomes. And it's just like, no, Lord, I know that you've got me. I trust in you. I know that you're in control and you've got things taken care of. And I trust in your promises and I delight in you and who you are and your character and your goodness and your faithfulness. And I just want to do your will and give me your desires. And so I hope that that's encouraging because, man, when we can just enjoy him and then we enjoy life more too, because let's face it, when we're stressed and worried, we're not enjoying life. It sucks the life out of us. And I'm guilty of this. I just get, you get so worried about things and the day to day and all that. You just lose sight of, man, just delighting in the Lord. And so I don't know if Tripp, you want to wrap this up. But
that's exactly right. I mean, I think, the downside of anxiety is all the ways that it just kind of hurts us and messes us up and causes us pain. But it's also, there's another side of that coin, which is just like missing the goodness that is right in front of us, right? One of my favorite quotes that I think about a lot is comparison is the thief of joy. Right. But comparison is the giver of much worry and much fear and much anxiety. Right.
Yes.
When you're comparing your walk with the Lord to someone else that you know and saying, why am I not as good as of a Christian as that person over there is? Right. We're just missing the grace and the kindness and the joy that's on offer right in front of us. When we're comparing our life to some kind of beautiful, manicured, usually fake life on social media, we're just filled with all kinds of like discontent, and we miss the beauty that God puts right in front of us. Going back to our lineup analogy, right? It's like once those games start at 1:00, if I'm sitting there looking at my phone, my sleeper app, and just saying, "Oh, did I get this right? Did I get that right?" I miss the football that's right in front of me.
That's right.
And so some of this is just, hey, God's got this. He's got you in his hands. He knows the journey that he wants to take you on. And at some point, you can just rest because you don't have to compare your walk with the Lord to somebody else's. His grace is sufficient for you. His power is made perfect in weakness. And he loves to meet us right where we are. And he has a journey of spiritual growth and adventure for you that he doesn't have in quite the same way for anyone else. And so some of this worry just blinds us to just the goodness that's right in front of us. So I think is a really important thing to remember.
It's good. I love it. And lastly, this peace that we long for, it can only be found in Christ. And so we have to know him and we have to surrender to Christ. And so we believe that Jesus came to earth. He died on the cross for our sin. He resurrected. It was resurrected by the power of God. And he lives today and invites us into eternal life with him. And so like we talked about a couple of weeks ago, that gives us hope. It also gives us peace. And so because of the gospel, because of the good news of Jesus, when we surrender to him, we now can live with peace and joy and hope and not be consumed with worry and stress. And sometimes I think we coddle it. Sometimes we celebrate stress. Like, I'm stressed, I'm busy. And I think that's dangerous. Mm-hmm. Whereas, man, what we really long for, our soul really longs for that peace. And it comes from Christ when we're in Christ. And then it comes, practically daily, when we're turning to him, keeping our eyes focused on him. Because again, like we were saying earlier, we start thinking about the world and our problems. And then now we're going down that tough path. But thankfully, Jesus is still with us and he's ready for us to turn to him, trust in him, and find our peace in him. So I hope that's encouraging for you. That's this week's breakout. And so I hope that you and your fantasy league will enjoy your league meeting as you discuss this topic and the questions that we provide on fantasyfootballfellowship.com. So let's continue the conversation. We've only got a few minutes left here today, but let's do a little peace or panic. And I tell you what, the wide receivers are creating quite a certain level of panic. So here we go.
Well, I guess deep down I'm feeling a little confused.
It's just a lot to process, and that's what I'm doing.
We can't have anyone freak out there, okay? We've got to keep our composure. We've got too far. There's too much to lose. We've got to keep our composure.
Well, don't worry. I'm not going to do what you all think I'm going to do, which is flip out.
You started the season. You had a top pick. You drafted a wide receiver. Maybe you went wide receiver in your first round or two. Do any of these names sound familiar? Or they're showing up on your fantasy roster? How about Drake London? Guilty. Took him in the second round. Technically, I guess he was my first round pick because I was at the turn. Anyway, Drake London, wide receiver 50 through 2 weeks. How about the excitement for A.J. Brown, Super Bowl champion? Wide receiver 85? What are we talking about? Brian Thomas Jr., first round pick, wide receiver 46. Cortland Sutton, wide receiver 43. DJ Moore, wide receiver 49. Calvin Ridley, wide receiver 56. Terry McLaurin, wide receiver 60. You should have listened to me on that one. But those wide receivers, are they causing you to panic, or do you still have peace about each of these players? So we're talking about peace today. Do you have peace for any of these guys, or what is your level of panic when it comes to fantasy for these guys?
I mean, as you're reading off that list, it's definitely more panic than peace for me. I mean, I think Roma Dunze is the wide receiver one in Chicago. It seems clear through 2 weeks. I was somebody who was in on DJ Moore coming into the season, and maybe there's still some hope there, but it doesn't look like Caleb. Well, I'm hoping that Caleb Williams is going to continue to develop. There have been signs of life, signs of positivity there, but right now that offense cannot sustain 2 top fantasy wide receivers. And Odunze is number one. So I'm panicking about DJ Moore. I'm definitely panicking about Brian Thomas Jr. There are some bad vibes there with like what's going on between him and the coaching staff. There's something weird is going on with Brian Thomas Jr. There are these reports that he doesn't practice hard. There were a couple of balls where he gave up on the route because it looked like it was kind of leading him into a hit. And to be fair to him, Trevor Lawrence does throw some risky passes, quote, hospital balls, so, but something weird is going on with Brian Thomas Jr. I kind of think if you want me to be positive with some of the guys on this list, I think the Titans have played 2 tough defenses with a rookie quarterback to start the season. And so I still feel cautiously optimistic about Ridley. I think that Terry McLaurin just needs time to get back into that rapport with Jaden Daniels. But now, Daniels may miss some time. So, but I do think that by the end of the season, that connection will be sort of live again. And then I just need to know more about what's going on with Drake London's shoulder. But that touchdown pass that London had in week 1 that was called off because he came down on his shoulder. It was one of the plays where he kind of messed up. He made that shoulder injury worse. If he'd caught that touchdown, we'd be having a different conversation right now. The Falcons were just able to run all over. Who did they play this week? I mean, it was like Algier and Bijan both had running back one. Weeks
the Vikings.
Week. Yeah, they were just
Sunday
able to
Night
run
Football.
all over the Vikings. The Vikings never pushed them to need to score quickly offensively. So I'm not too worried about Drake London, Ridley, or McLaurin. But so those first guys you named, I'm very worried about.
Yeah, the most panic would be Brian Thomas Jr., AJ Brown, and the Eagles, because like they're winning, playing well, and he's not a part of it. So I think the other thing we have to consider with some of these guys struggling, like who could get traded. Maybe DJ Moore, maybe AJ Brown. Like there's a possibility there. But yeah, I like the trajectory for Calvin Ridley. And I actually think Cortland Sutton, I think the Broncos will continue to be a good offense with Bo Nix. That was kind of an interesting game with the Colts. They won the game and they called the penalty. So I think we look maybe a little bit differently on the Broncos, but I think Cortland Sutton will be okay as time goes on. So a little bit of peace for him. All right, let's go to our next segment and look at sort of the positive side of things and some guys that are playing well, and let's determine whether or not we're going to jump on the bandwagon.
Get off the bandwagon.
It's time for Bandwagon Riding. Getting on, getting off. Make up your mind, all right?
So we just mentioned the Broncos, and I am all on I'm kind of on their bandwagon, but specifically with Troy Franklin. There was talk last year, and I always got a kick out of it because it was like, well, Bo Nix and Troy Franklin, like they're buddies from Oregon, like they're going to be great. And then Troy Franklin did nothing year 1 as a rookie. Well, the connection, it was there. He developed as a wide receiver, and now through 2 weeks, he's playing well. Thankfully, I did pick him up in one league on waivers last week, so that was positive. But I think he'll continue to be the number 2 guy with Cortland Sutton. Doesn't mean he's taking over for Sutton. I don't think this has to be either or. I think both can thrive in this offense with Bo Nix. So I am jumping on the Troy Franklin bandwagon. And let's see, who else am I jumping on? I would also be jumping on, I think Cam Scatterbo. And I hate to say it because I don't think I'll be able to get him on any rosters, but I think there's enough there. This offense with the Giants should be, is a little bit better than week 1. And so, I'm intrigued by Cam Scatterbo, so jumping on his bandwagon. What about for you?
I mean, I already mentioned Roma Dunze. It's just clear that he's the preferred wide receiver there, and he had a great week this week. I mean, I do think that the Bears offense with Ben Johnson is going to be exciting enough to sustain one really good wide receiver. And I think that that's going to be a Dunze. Another name that you put on this list that I just think is a pretty fascinating one is De'Ami Brown. Now, maybe I'm a little bit biased here because he's a Carolina guy, one of the few Carolina guys that's relevant in the NFL. He went to UNC. He was great in college. And then, it's with the Brian Thomas situation, with it being unclear like what Travis Hunter's role is going to look like. De'Ami Brown he showed some flashes in the playoffs last year. Nobody remembers it from a fantasy perspective because it was during the NFL playoffs. But he was a touted guy kind of coming into the season, and then he really only had one year where the Commanders were relevant, where he would have been able to do anything. So I think that De'Ami Brown might be one of these guys that you could put in as like your wide receiver 3 when flex or when bye weeks start hitting a few weeks from now. So that's an intriguing one to me that I might spend a couple bucks of fab on to add him on waivers. But yeah, like you said, 2 weeks in, it's just hard to know which of these trends is real. I thought it was going to be Marvin Mims for the Broncos and not Troy Franklin. But through 2 weeks, it looks like Franklin's the preferred guy there. So hard to know what's going on with that receiving core.
I think he's built better and set up better to be more of the number 2. And then Mims will be that third guy, boomer bust type weeks every once in a while, but not a consistent fantasy guy, but can help the Broncos in a number of ways as another weapon. So as we wrap up the show, we always love to give some kind of waiver wire thoughts and guys to consider picking up. But then also we like to talk about some of the guys that maybe randomly scored or provided some contributions out of the blue. And we like to ask the question, who is that?
Come on, are you going to tell me who that is? Come on, seriously, who is that?
So let's begin. Actually, let's just keep it going with the Broncos because now he's with the Saints. But Devon Vele, the appearance of Devon Vele.
Come on, are you going to tell me who that is?
Don't worry about it. You don't need to know who he is. He'll score maybe one other time this year, but the Saints probably won't score much. But one team that does score a lot. How about the Baltimore Ravens? Like it had to have been Rashad Bateman, right? We were all excited about Rashad Bateman. No. It wasn't Rashad Bateman. It was Tylan Wallace.
Come on, are you going to tell me who that is?
And then how about a guy, Walker? I don't even know his first name.
Dantez Walker.
Seriously,
Yeah.
who is that?
Yeah.
Come on, are you going to tell me who that is?
Lamar was slinging it around. He threw for 5 touchdowns, and 2 of them were to guys named Tylan Wallace and Dantez Walker, who none of us had on our fantasy teams this week.
And then in Cincinnati, it was a big scoring day. A lot of people catching passes, but Mitchell Tinsley?
Come on, seriously, who is that? Come on, are you going to tell me who that is?
Who is that?
Who is Mitchell Tinsley? Right? The Bengals. I saw it. I was like, that was the Bengals game?
Yeah. Uh-huh.
Gosh, I remember the Tinsley. I was like, Tinsley? Jamal Tinsley played for the Pacers? So basketball, what's he doing out there? But so those are a couple of names that are funny this week. And we should know about Torrey Horton in Seattle. He's a name to keep an eye on. I'm not sure you have to... He's still fighting for targets, but he's someone to be aware of. I'd also keep an eye on Theo Johnson with the Giants, with tight ends being, it's always tricky to find a good tight end. In Denver, run away from Evan Ingram. But how about Adam Troutman scoring a touchdown?
Come on, seriously, who is that?
I feel like there are guys who are just mainstays on this who is that segment, and Vele is one of them. Troutman is one of them. He's always good for a few 1 reception, 3 yards, and a touchdown games every season. And then a guy who hasn't popped up here yet, but I think will be here next week is Nick Akini Westbrook. He's a mainstay on this list as well. So
he hasn't done anything in Miami.
I saw him kind of catch a couple of passes.
Did he? Okay.
And I bet you that he will catch a touchdown in one of these next couple of weeks, and he'll be on the list here. I like that Brock Wright caught the pass instead of Laporta for the Lions this week. I like that it's spelled Bork right here.
I spelled it wrong.
Well, I think I like Bork better. I might go with Bork Wright moving forward. But yeah, Bork's good for one of these random touchdowns every once in a while.
So there you go. Those are some random guys, but it's seriously who to pick up on waiver wire. Yeah, definitely Troy Franklin if he's available. Like I mentioned earlier, I still believe Braylon Allen could get a chance. So if somebody drops him and gives up on him, he's somebody I would pick up. And I know James Cook's playing great, but get his backup. You want Ray Davis. You want part of the bill. So those guys who, even though they haven't done a lot early, and then like I've said every week, please listen to me. Kyle Managai. He's my guy in Chicago.
Come on, seriously, who is that?
He's the backup running back. I know they can't run the ball. DeAndre Swift not doing much. What are they going to do? They're going to turn to the rookie and go, hey, let's try it, see what he's got.
Yeah.
Let's give him some volume.
But I think what you reminded us of at the beginning of the episode is a great thing to end on, which is there are going to be people who panic drop somebody this week. And so especially if you're in one of those leagues, it's worth knowing what your league's waiver settings are. And if you're in one of those leagues with rolling waivers where you're not using fab, and if you give up your like number one waiver priority to add somebody and then a really great player gets dropped, this might be one of those weeks where unless you have a glaring need on your roster, you're slow to make a waiver ad just to see if somebody drops a great player and you can keep top waiver priority in your league. That's a move that in these early weeks of the season when people are panicking is something that I like to do if there's not an obvious ad that I need to make. So yeah, keep that waiver priority if there's nobody that excites you on waivers.
That's an underrated aspect, even if you're in FOB, because I bid the same amount, $3 or whatever, but I got the bid because I had the waiver priority. Yeah. So that's huge. All right, guys. Well, hey, thanks for some of the questions that came in. We'll have to answer those off air. But thanks everybody for listening and watching today. Trip, enjoy week 3. Gets going Thursday night to maybe our last chance to see Mike McDaniel as the head coach of the Miami Dolphins. I know that's your boy.
Yeah, you don't want to be playing in prime time right now if you're Mike McDaniel. Yeah.
Oh gosh, that's gonna be something. Thursday night will be something. But anyway, thanks so much for being a part of the show today. Thanks everybody for listening. I'm Bryce. I'm a fantasy manager who follows Jesus. I believe in the good news that he died on the cross for my sin. He was resurrected. And through faith, I've been saved by his grace. I hope that is true for you as well. And I hope you'll join me as we live life as sports fans who follow Jesus together. And as we talked about during our breakout today, peace is available. It's only found in Christ. As we surrender our lives to him, as we follow him and we live our lives in him, we can experience peace. So let's keep our eyes fixed on him. Let's trust him. And let's not get caught up in all the worry and the stress that tries to drag us down. And so let's have peaceful fantasy weeks and, more importantly, a peaceful life. Have a great one. We'll talk to you next time right here on the Fantasy Football Fellowship Podcast.